What's up, welcome back. I'm John Stark from MovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today we're going to talk about Alien, Romulus, the, the opportunity that Fede Alvarez has to make his stamp on the alien world, um, after many others have had their opportunity to. Most of them release God, but some others have had their opportunity to make their stamp in the alien world. Fede is really trying to um, kind of kickstart something different, something new. It's not like a requel. It doesn't necessarily reset anything. We've had some prequel films that take place before Alien, the original, like Prometheus, Alien Covenant. And this takes place sort of like in between Alien and Aliens. So I kind of love how we're doing this franchise with sort of like little inserted stories without having to like boot something from the franchise, because nobody dares mess with at least the timeline of Eleanor Ripley. So she will go on, like her timeline is gonna continue at least for the first two films. I think it'd be weird if somebody tried to like knock the last two out, but I could see that happening. I mean, you know, we saw what happened with Jamie Lee Curtis with the Halloween reboot, and it's not like every sequel after the first movie was wildly disliked. So they just needed to requel, obviously, Halloween Resurrection, but there's no reason that that movie couldn't have been a sequel to H2O, and they couldn't have kept everything in canon. You know, really no reason. Just switch it up a little bit, plug in Josh Hartnett or something in there as like oh, where's my son? I don't know. But it's been 20 years since. Anyway, it's been 20 years since 20 years. Yeah, so that would have been, it could have been possible. They just chose not to do it that way. Here, obviously, don't know. The first two films are like basically considered film classics, and I think people are afraid of deleting David Fincher's, even though he's not that happy with it. So, but don't fuck with David Fincher. So we have Alien Romulus, which stars Kaylee Spaney. Honestly, the other name I immediately recognized was Isabella Merced. She was in another film this year called Turtles All the Way Down. She was actually pretty good in that. That went straight to Max. They kind of abandoned it. It was one of those adaptations, one of those John Green adaptations that I guess now we're just packaging his stuff and sending it to streaming services now. But odd movie, but it forced her to have to give a really good performance. Unfortunately here, the characters are underdeveloped, despite the fact that we have quite a bit of time to develop them. But the film is so focused, as it should be, as it rightly should be. I'm not going to argue with Fede. I just think I would maybe have dialed up the character development just slightly, because I think, I've talked about this in another review recently, in terms of horror movies, when you think about, you can either have like disposable people who feel like they're dying and nobody cares about them, or you can have people who they become fan favorites even though they die. You know, like people who you're like, oh man, I didn't realize the character. The only reason you get attached to those characters is through character development and writing strong characters who make strong choices. So if you want that for yourself, if you want that for your film, then you have to do that here. I suppose people would look at, I think his name is David Jensen, who plays Andy, as being maybe the character development of the film, because he starts out as an android who is almost played like he has a learning disability. And it's very odd. Like, she has to take care of him, and he's not like you. At first, you don't get the vibes. Like, I knew from the reviews that he was an android, but I didn't quite understand what people were talking about. And she has to like take care of him in a way that, he's like the android and he's like, well, my primary directive is to take care of you. And it's like, I don't know how you're doing that. You just seem so like something has horribly malfunctioned inside of you. So, yeah, he doesn't feel like the kind of strong, powerful android that changes. It gives him sort of a different perspective, and it also allows the actor to have this complete different like 180 in terms of performance. So he gets to play these two very different characters. So it's somewhat impressive in terms of acting, although I don't necessarily think we need to throw an Oscar at him. But if somebody was to make it out of this film and start getting more films offered to them, I would say probably it's going to be the dude who played Andy, which I think his name is David Jensen. Kaylee Spaney is obviously, she's still riding hot off of her buzz for Priscilla. She was in Civil War, where she's got very, very low levels of Oscar buzz. But the fact that she has any Oscar buzz at all is still good for her career. And then this is obviously she's not going to be Eleanor Ripley, but neither was anybody else who was in Prometheus or Alien Covenant. Like, that's fine. It's not going to happen for them. But they do try to sort of wrap a lot of ideas in here. Fede has a lot of, I don't want to spoil all of them for you, but some of them are pretty cool. Like, he has some cool ideas of what to do with the acid, and the audio description takes full advantage of describing as much of the gory details as possible. Things dripping on, like, they do a lot of things here with the acid. And really the fact that these things can't be killed, like, it's so hard, and there's so many of them on this ship. So yeah, watching this sort of progress, and then it does kind of follow. Some of the people are like, well, this has too many shout outs to the first movie, or just in general alien shout outs, quotes that were said in other movies as well. And then of course you have Ash, the revived Ian Holm for this movie. In case you didn't know, they brought back Ian Holm through, like some sort of malfunctioning. He's in a terrible state anyway. So the fact that his voice, they're using AI to sort of render his voice, but he always sounds like he's like a recording. So they've done this interesting thing with his android where he's not functional, like not 100% functional, and just sort of exists to interact primarily with Andy in a way like, oh, here's another android that I can manipulate. And people don't know my history, so I can just tell them whatever I want them to hear. So it helps if you've seen other alien movies, because then you have sort of a better understanding of Ash, especially considering he's talking about things that happened in the first film, and you're like, that's not true. Or, like, he's not being helpful. But it does kind of feel like a horror movie where the characters are underdeveloped and written just to exist to die. And those films are a little bit less interesting to me. I know a lot of people have been like, oh, I'm really excited. Have you seen Alien Romulus? It's very great. And I think a lot of those people, especially the ones that are blind, are doing it because of the audio description, which is fantastic and absolutely is one of the best audio description tracks I've heard this year, because of the fact that it takes like a lot of really great attention to detail in terms of like any moment that it can possibly get here, to describe something it does. The only thing that I would say is there wasn't really any sort of like overly specific ethnic descriptions of any of the cast members. It was just sort of like, well, they're in space, and when in space, we are the world, we are the children, I guess is the point. So everybody's just kind of up there. But again, it goes like that could have helped, but those just being something is not necessarily an actual character development. I mean, even if the audio description had given us narration, that's, being the black one, for example, that's not a character. That's not a character choice. So these people, they just needed more. I mean, like, I think the strongest character choices they have are really the fact that they know each other, that they're friends, they've worked together before. There's like two of them are like related. Um, that's like that's about it. It's very limited. Like, not even like into the, well, this is my skill set. You know what I'm saying? You know, like, stand back because I'm really good at this, or I'm the guy who fixes this, or I'm the guy who does this, or oh, I've got great medical knowledge, or it feels just like a bunch of random people who are like, whoops, we stumbled into something. Sort of like some of the Halloween movies. They're like, oh, is this Michael Myers' house? Let's go inside. I bet he's not home. Oh my god, he's home. Whoops. uh, yeah, and then you just slowly watch them getting stalked one by one. So Fede, it's a mixed bag, man. I want to like give him so many props because there are so many cool set pieces and stuff that he does here, and choices, and he makes really sort of bold choices as a director, like as he should. And I applaud him for that because there are certain things where I'm like, that is absolutely why you should be making Alien Romulus, is because you have a fresh opinion. But he also allowed these really sort of limp noodle characters into his film, like he didn't care. And maybe he likes the style of horror movies where everybody's just expendable and they just like walk in and you're just like, well, who's, it's arguable. It's so hard to even call Kaylee Spaney the lead because she never feels like the lead. She just happens to be the first person we meet. So, but like once the film kicks in, it does kind of spread them all out as like any of them could die at any minute. And it's like, well, that's true because I know nothing about any of them. So I suppose, I mean, there's something to be said for some of these other films when you really develop a character. If you look at Alien and you watch Alien, there isn't a strong indication that that film is going to final girl Ellen Ripley at the end of that film. Uh, she's got other cast members in there who are well known at the time. She's up against Tom Skerritt, who definitely feels like he's more of the lead of the film, and other actors as well. And they all sort of take up this space, and they're better developed. Their relationships together are better developed. The movie sits with them a little bit more, and you get sort of this back and forth, and you seem to understand a little bit more about the characters. And then they get put in the situation, and then the film turns stuff on its head and sort of puts Ellen in this situation where maybe she's the final girl after all. Maybe it is up to Sigourney Weaver. Interestingly, they don't do that with Kaylee Fleming. She is like the first thing, so, and kind of the most well-known actress in the film, although that's stretching it because her career basically started with Priscilla, for all intents and purposes, for people recognizing her. So that's a stretch. Yeah. I just, my one dig here is the character development, the harkening back, the direct quotes to other things, and sort of the, I don't know, off the wall way to sort of be in the final act of the things that sort of ideas that sort of come together, where he takes a little bit of some other films that have already suggested things and cobbles it together to create like a super alien type thing. I'm trying not to over spoil, but um, when that happens, it feels like, what else did you want him to do? Did you just want him to follow the same beats? Like, this is interesting. It's original. This is, I mean, we're going to keep making alien movies apparently, so we might as well have somebody who has at least bold choices to make, so that they remain interesting. But what I would encourage for Fede and for anybody else who tackles another alien movie is, please, for the love of God, understand why people like Ellen Ripley as a character, and why people like the original Alien movie and Aliens. It has a lot to do with the fact that the characters are well written. that we actually know who they are. We actually have some sort of semblance of, you know, other than just their relationship to other people, or like, oh, we're all friends, or oh, that's my cousin, you know, like that's not a character. Who are you? What is it that you do here? What is your job on the ship? What is your skill set? You know, like when you send somebody in who it's their job, like they're the weapons expert, and you send them in, you're expecting like an action sequence. So that can be either shocking when the weapons expert gets killed off super fast, or it can lead to a really exciting action sequence because you're like, okay, this is the Rambo of the fucking group, you know? But if you send the person in there who's the medic and has never fired a gun in her life, and then you get really worried for her and you're like, oh no, oh god, this is the one. She's never touched a gun before. She has no idea what she's doing. You know, I mean, things like that, just exploring them a little bit more. Oh, this is her first day on the job. She's never going to make it. Oh, God, she's still dealing with the trauma of the loss of her parents. And, you know, I mean, like, there's so many things that you can be that can make these characters interesting that just don't happen. There's a little bit of history between, I guess, the two leads, Kaylee Spaney and Andy, because of like how they literally start the film, and we have to learn more about them because there's nothing else to do until they find the rest of the crew. So they have a little bit more character development, but when they find the rest of the crew, good luck. Good luck. Then it becomes about the mission. They forget to really develop the other characters, and then it just kind of feels like well, I'm waiting for everybody who's not Kaylee Spaney or Andy to die. Like, I never had any sort of expectation that any of those people would live, because I felt like they'd already played their hand. They were like, oh, no, Kaylee's the lead. So everybody else is expendable, which is unfortunate. So, yeah, I think it's okay. And I like the fact that Fede took some big swings here. And in terms of alien movies, I feel about for this, like I felt about Alien Covenant. I felt like, but that had maybe some stronger characters in it, but not quite the same level of inventiveness in action. You know what I'm saying? Like that film felt more like it was following Prometheus and less like it was essentially what Fede is doing is he's taking a dart and throwing it at a wall, and he doesn't even know if there's a dartboard there. You know what I'm saying? Like he's just throwing something into the timeline and seeing if it sticks. And I can kind of see where this fits now. So if you're trying to watch the Alien films, you want to watch it like Alien, Alien Romulus, Aliens, you know, actually Prometheus, Alien Covenant, Alien Romulus, Aliens. Like I kind of see what they're doing. So, but acting wise, Kaylee's not bad. I think some other people have been really hard on her, but it's just the way her character is written. You know, they're trying to pull off the, you know, the unsuspecting female hero like Ellen was, but the problem is that Sigourney Weaver was never the lead of that film until she was the final girl. So here, unfortunately, Kaylee feels like this film would have been way more interesting. And this is, I guess, a spoiler, but I'm sorry. I love you. But if like Isabella Merced had transformed into the lead, that would have been far more interesting. Like if they had found a way to knock off Kaylee Spaney, who you think is going to be the lead, and then it's like, no, we're Ellen Ripleying Isabella Merced. I'd have been like, well, that's a choice, and that's a bold choice, and it's a much bolder choice than what they went with. So, some great stuff in the story around the characters and the way that Fede shapes the scenes and the ideas of what to do with acid. There's one scene with acid that is just, it got bonus points. That's a little bit higher because of that, because it's one of the most memorable scenes of the film. It's like one of those things like, if you know, you know, and I don't want to ruin it for you. And there's even like a secondary scene where I thought what they did with the acid was really, in terms of horror, I thought was really interesting, really intriguing. So there were like 2 times he used the acid like super well. very effectively. And I was like, yes, thank you. But other times it was like, who are you? Who is this person? Anyway, um, so balancing that out, I'm gonna say Alien Romulus comes in at a B. I'm not hating on the movie completely. Uh, this is the kind of film where I would look at Fede's directorial style and I would put it higher than necessarily the film or the screenplay, because I think a lot of what makes this film work comes in the choices that Fede makes. He's just directing off of a script that he should have come in and said, we need to change this, this, and this, and then I'm going to direct the film. You know what I'm saying? Like, or he should have noticed some things in the editing and been like, well, why aren't my characters stronger? You know, I mean, there's some things related to that I hold against him, but for the most part, a lot of what works about this film has to do with his choices in direction. And of course, I'm assuming like all the downstream technical below the line people who went into making the visual effects, the sound design, the score, probably cinematography, stuff like that, everything that goes into those moments. So makeup and hairstyling. So yeah, I mean, I can see why people like this, but it's not. We still have not conquered the original Alien film, which I reviewed for spooky season. So check that out. We're celebrating an anniversary this year. Anyway, that's it. I'm done with Alien Romulus. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.